What's happening, my fellow geeks and geekettes? Welcome to a brand new episode of Cosplay Chris, and in today's video I'm going to be showing you guys the process of making a 1-to-1 scale Jared Leto Knightmare Joker bust from Zack Snyder's Justice League. The additional photography that Zack did for his 4-hour extended cut of the Justice League film that included Jared Leto coming back as Knightmare Joker along with Ben Affleck, Ray Fisher, Ezra Miller, Amber Heard. Sorry, excuse me. Now, this particular bust comes courtesy of James Icarino over at Real Design Studios. And the wig itself was made by Greg Morayo. Now, this is originally part of my Knightmare Joker cosplay, and it's just one of those things where I just don't think I'm gonna have time to do it for conventions and stuff like that. So the idea is to utilize the cosplay for a 1-to-1 scale bust. So we have this beautiful wig that Greg has made. It's a lace front wig, so we're gonna be attaching that permanently later in the video. But if we have a good look at the casting itself, it comes from a 3D scan of Jared Leto himself, and it's quite scary and eerie to see him. No eyebrows, no nothing, and with that gray tone, it's really odd. Now, the eyes themselves comes from Oliver Schwartz of Schwartz Effects. Now, you guys know I've used his eyes before with the Pennywise display as well as the Captain America pop vinyl, the zombie version of him for that matter. So the good thing is he's already been primed and prepped and ready for paint. So the base layer obviously is going to be white. And for that, we're gonna be using a Liquitex white ink that is gonna be airbrushed all over the piece. And by airbrushing the ink on, you can really control the shading and the contours, because I just don't want it to be a stark white. I want shading and little nuances going on, especially around the ears, the cheekbones and stuff like that, just so you can kinda still see the gray bleeding through just a little bit. Now, in terms of the rest of the painting, it's all going to be done by hand and then sealed up with a matte sealer. So the idea is we're obviously going to finish the head off, permanently insert the eyes and try and have them in a certain direction, if not straight ahead, but kind of looking down. I want him looking down and looking menacing. I'm going to be utilizing my surgeon's gown as well as that bulletproof vest that I made, and then utilizing a mannequin torso to really make a nice dynamic display, and also using a mannequin hand to be holding up a Joker card. I'm really excited about this one, so with that being said, let's get to it. Alrighty, we've got everything set up to airbrush the base coat of white on the 3D print itself. So I've got my Azedo airbrush kit. We've got our Liquitex acrylic titanium white ink. Now, I am gonna have this dialed out on full, so we're just gonna be misting everything as we go, and I've got it on a Lazy Susan, so we can just keep rotating the Joker and just spritzing that white on. So I've done a little test on the back here, and it seems pretty damn good to my liking. Now, I want to build this up in layers. I definitely want to take my time with it because, like I said in the beginning of the video, I want that gray still kind of bleeding through. I don't exactly want a stark white, because from what I've seen, screenshots and also Suicide Squad, it's not a proper solid white. There are, I guess you could say, flesh tones, but also darker colors bleeding through the white, and it just gives it a bit more depth. So we're just gonna take our Liquitex ink and pour it into our airbrush cup. Now I'm just gonna fire up the air compressor and let it charge up. All right, here we go. All right, overall pretty happy with how that's turned out. So the next step is I'm just gonna seal this layer up with some Liquitex matte varnish, again, fed through the airbrush, and that's just gonna matte and mute everything, but also protect this first layer before we go in and start doing all the Knightmare Joker clown makeup. Alrighty, first up, we're going to be doing his eyes as well as the scars, and for that I'm just going to be using a black oil color. So what we're aiming for is a pretty solid black around the eyes, and then moving out to kind of a smoky black around this area here. From what I've seen, it kind of just starts pretty solid, and then as it goes out, it blends into the white. Just not naturally, but just nice and organically. Now I'm going to be using this size brush for the eyes and also a finer brush for the certain scars around his face. Once this step is done, I will be sealing it up with another coat of the acrylic matte sealer from Liquitex.
We live in a society where shitty commentary is a distant memory.
I'm sorry, I had two Geeks and Geekettes. So this stage is pretty self-explanatory. It's just a matter of building up those layers with that black oil color, making sure to have a very stark black around the actual eyes themselves, and then going out and transitioning to a nice smoky kind of gray / black to where the white makeup is. And also the scars / scratches, pretty self-explanatory, just more oil color with a finer brush. Now for the lips, I'm mixing a red and a black acrylic because it seems like there's a two-tone red going on here with Jared Leto's makeup, where his actual lips are a much darker red as opposed to the red on the outer parts of his lips. So the outer parts are going to be a much lighter red, whereas when it comes to mixing up the paints for the lips themselves, I'm actually just going to add a bit of black to the red, as you can see right there, just to break things up a little and just to break up the monotony of, instead of just having one stark red on the lips, we've got a two-tone there, and just adds a bit more depth. And I was really happy with the end result and how those lips ultimately turned out. Now it came to the wig, I just positioned everything, just tried to make sure that it was the same height as Jared Leto's hairline, grabbed some of that cheap and nasty super glue and started gluing the part there to the actual 3D print itself and also the hairline. And keep in mind, this is a lace front wig, a beautiful lace front wig at that, so it adhered very well to the actual sculpt. So for the teeth, I'm actually using dental appliances. Like, these are practice pieces for orthodontists and stuff like that, and they cost 55 bucks. But what we're going to be doing is taking molds of these pieces, because the plastic that it's made from is very shiny, very glossy, and I want to be able to make resin castings of these. So we're just going to do a pretty quick, easy, dirty block mold utilizing some cardboard box pieces that I had laying around to make the walls of the actual block mold. Again, just cutting some strips of cardboard into place. Now it's going to be a mixture of gluing them and then hot gluing them into place before we mix up our silicone. Again, just something quick, and it doesn't have to break the bank. Now for the silicone, we're going to be using Pinky Sil. You guys, most of you guys will know this stuff. Mix ratio is 100 to 100. I used 300 grams total for this one, and I had some left over, which was great. I'm one of those people, whereas if I'm using silicone, I'd rather have a bit left over that's going to waste instead of not enough. There have been times when I've gone to make molds and I haven't had enough silicone, and I've had to frantically mix up a new batch whilst the original batch is curing and kicking in the mold, and it's just very messy. So I gave this about an hour to cure. When it came to demolding, I really wanted to do it bit by bit in sections, and one of the pieces of the teeth was stuck in there but pulled right out pretty easily. So when it comes to the actual resin, we're going to be using super cast resin. I use this stuff all the time, and the great thing is it dries a nice bone white, so it's the perfect blank canvas for, say, a tooth color. Now the next shot coming up I love, and in the words of Jesse Pinkman, yeah, science bitch, look at that chemical reaction happening right there. So I actually demolded both pieces whilst they were still malleable and flexible, because I had to kind of fit them and properly kind of maneuver them in Jared's mouth, which sounds very weird. So for the gums, I'm going to be using a hot pink pearl from Model Masters, which is an acrylic. Keep in mind, you are never going to see these whilst they're mounted inside of the mouth. This was more or less just for a bit of practice, just to get my bearings, to get my confidence up with painting teeth castings, and I was pretty happy with how that worked out. For the actual staining of the teeth, it was a mixture of a watered down, very slightly watered down brown and black shoe polish, because Jared has very decayed teeth in that scene from Justice League. And for the actual caps of the teeth, I got some pewter colored Lemire acrylic paint. This is an acrylic paint that has metallic particles mixed into it, but it's also non-toxic, which is great. Again, you're not going to see much of the caps, but I just wanted to have something that emulated his cap teeth. So the lowers of his teeth are pretty much all capped, whereas the uppers are partially capped on certain teeth. Like certain parts have an angled cap, and his two front teeth have covered caps, but with the exception of some square pieces that still show his original teeth. And I was really happy with how these turned out. And again, these were sealed up with the matte sealer from Liquitex, the matte acrylic sealer. So I just got some EVA foam and mounted them on the teeth castings, and this way it adds more surface area for gluing this inside the casting, whereas instead of just having little bits of glue kind of gripping onto certain parts of the teeth, you've got EVA foam that is going to stick right to the surface on the inside of the 3D print / casting. And it was a bit of finessing, a bit of futzing to get that positioning right, because I want that neutral kind of mouth opening, and I was really happy with how that turned out. Now, the mannequin torso we're going to be using is from a place in Sydney called Reverse Garbage, which has a lot of great mannequin pieces there. Now, I had to get rid of that excess of the neck with the angle grinder. And this is very touch and go, you know, do a fitting, go back, shave off parts of the neck. As you can see right here, I'm doing a fitting, and a little bit of shaving more on the neck was required because I want him looking on an angle. I want him looking in his right hand direction. Now we're going to halve the arm and cut the fingers off because I want the fingers to be posable, and we can actually make them posable on the cheap. So I'm going to be using some garden hose kind of bendy stuff. It's like EVA foam with wire embedded in. You can wrap your garden hose in it. So I cut it to length to make sure it suited the proper length of all the fingers, glued them in place, and once a glove's on it, you don't even realize that those are like garden hose holders once they're all on there, and you can pose them, flex them however you want, and it won't break the bank. So the base is the same base that I used on the T-Rex custom collectible from a few weeks ago. And I'm mounting my thread holder in there and using a galvanized threaded pole. But I want the mannequin torso leaning on an angle, so I'm grabbing a paint stripper gun and heating the base of the actual mannequin. And what we're going to do then is mount it on the galvanized threaded pole, and then that way I can work with the malleable plastic, and then pull that mannequin torso forward so it looks like he's leaning forward. But to fix it in place, we're going to have to mix up some more supercars because I can't just have the mannequin torso resting on that thread pipe. So by adding the resin, it's going to lock it in place and it's not going to go anywhere. Now, for mounting the actual head on the mannequin torso, I'm using good old Araldite, which you mix the two parts together. But the actual mix nozzle, it's like a reservoir, and it mixes it on the way down when you syringe it out, which is great. Now, I did have to hold this head in place for about a good 2 minutes, even though it says on the packet 90 seconds. 2 minutes later, and it did not want to budge at all. And the good thing about Araldite is once it's on, it'll just stick to anything. So for the arm itself, I got some extra PVC piping, threaded it on the inside, and poured some more supercast resin on the inside so it locked it in place. Because the idea is to have the hand mounted on the base, showing the Joker card, and it's just essentially going to rest in the base. So I got a boring attachment for the drill that was the same diameter as the PVC pipe attachment, and just lightly drilled in a groove there, not all the way through, but just something so the PVC pipe can rest in like so, as you see right there. Now, for coloring the actual base, it was just a flat black from Rust-Oleum. This was about 3 coats, and the good thing is we finally had some sunshine after days of torrential rain, so this stuff dried in no time. But again, about a good 3 coats just to get a nice even matte black look, and that's what I'm going for, just simplicity for the base. I don't want the base to deter from the actual overall look and aesthetic of the bust itself. And I'm just reattaching the thread holder there and popping the mannequin on, or should I say threading the mannequin into the base itself, and it screws on very easily. I love those thread kits you can buy. So I'm getting the remnants of my cosplay, and I actually chopped part of the butcher's gown in half so there wasn't excess hanging out, and tying him all up. Now, I do have his hair up in a man bun just so I can get everything on with ease, like the bulletproof vest and also the surgical mask for that matter, and just finessing everything and futzing with everything just to make sure it all looks natural on him. And then let the boy's hair down, and some spray gel was required just to keep his hair in place, and I was going for that certain look with the hair tucked behind the ears on either side, and then mounted the hand in place with that little groove there, threw in a Joker card, and then we're ready for the final reveal. And there we have it, guys. The Knightmare Joker life-size display bust is done and dusted. I'm actually very chuffed with how this turned out. Sometimes when you do life-size busts, it can be very hard to get the aesthetic and just the natural feel and positioning of everything quite right. And I actually am really happy with how everything has turned out with this, and just keeping in mind that it's supposed to be like that simple museum piece that you'd see on display at like Warner Brothers and stuff like that. So with that being said, I really hope you guys enjoyed this little tutorial video. Wherever you are in the world, please have yourselves an absolute cracker of a day. I hope you're well. Hope you're happy. Be merry, be silly. And until next time, geeks, please always remember, cosplayers do it best.